miles per hour. They won't be doing it here because
Baird and Flat have stayed behind.
Paul Radisich has got a shocking start. He lost it from the back row of the grid. Also Craig Beard.
Hey! Dean Cockerton, there's a big spin. It started with Barry Tomlinson, but Dean Cockerton streaked away to the lead. I don't know what happened to Tomlinson on the inside. It looks like something may have gone wrong with the car for a moment, but it's certainly a big spin. Well, Dean Cockerton is in fact leading the race now in the Science Centre route. This is amazing performance. He won't be able to believe his luck, in which it is. He's taken advantage of all the opportunities. And he's pushed the Science Centre route right to the front. This is the ex-Craig Baird car, and he's leading from Mike Berg and Justin Bell. Each lap, it's pulling out up a second. Now, this is staggering. I cannot believe that car is going so well. Dean Cockerton must be underrated.
Turning in a great drive. He got a great start. Dramatic pile-up as they went through Champion. Look at the battle now as Kenny Smith is trying to take Paul Radisich.
Kenny has. Well, Kenny's two wheels.
Trouble for Bell there. Looks like he may have missed a gear coming out of the hairpin as they hoop up to the Mobile Mountain now, and it's Radisich who's just moved into third place. Remember, 18 laps, Cockerton has the lead, but it's really developing into a close, exciting battle now for the minor placings as we see Kenny Smith moving around the outside. There's Radisich, and Radisich is making a move now on Mike Berg. Also, Justin Bell is under attack, and Craig Beard has got past Kenny Smith. So Craig Beard, starting from the back row of the grid, got a shocking start. He's on the fly. Radisich can take him under braking as they go to the hairpin. Looks like Radisich may have just snicked into second place as they come out through the hairpin, and that's Radisich now. He's moved into second place, right behind Dean Cockerton. Well, a little bit of a gap back, but he's taken that second place from Mike Berg.
Coming up now, Dean Cockerton is going to lap Barry Flat. Barry Flat having his second season from the Pacific Racing. He's got an ex-Graham Lawrence Swift. That was one of the cars that Graham Lawrence ran last year. But this is closing up the race now. That's taken a lot of the advantage away from Dean Cockerton. He'll be so angry. All his lead is evaporated now, and the field has closed right up behind him.
Look at Radisich. Oh, there's a spin, and it's Kenny Smith who's off.
That's Clint Brown corner.
I've done that before. In one of those Graham Lawrence Pacifics. But you see how they go with the power down the back straight. If Radisich can take him under braking, and Radisich has gone outside. Cockerton has the inside line.
He's got to pull right across the front. Can he do it? He's done it.
Paul Radisich, what a great maneuver. Into first now. Craig Beard closing in on Dean Cockerton. So it's Radisich who's now taken the lead first down the start-finish lane. In the Reynard, Cockerton going through Champion, holding off Craig Beard, second and third. That's the battle at the moment. Oh, and Dean Cockerton's lost it, going into the back straight, and he spun it 3-4 times. Under pressure from Craig Beard, and Cockerton, such bad luck. A great start, led the race, and now he's blown it.
These two on your screen are first and second, and Baird is coming back at Radisich. He's going for the outside line. He's level. He's get past to try and take the initiative, but he'll get a better line coming out. I suspect he'll dive down the inside and accelerate, and he's done it.
Craig Beard hits the lead. What a fantastic bit of driving. Cuts off Paul Radisich. Heads through the left-hand sweeper up over Mobile Mountain, and Craig Beard staying from pole. Then the back of the grid after stalling at the start has taken the lead, but Radisich is coming back down Main Straight.
Back down the inside, but he hasn't got the power to get by. He lost a little bit of initiative on the top of the mountain and couldn't get the speed up. You must come over there absolutely flat, and Radisich got balked by a slower car. So let's watch now from about 3/4 of the way down the straight. See if Radisich has enough slipstream and momentum to come back. The Selectrix car running like a watch. It really is showing up exactly. The team has been in Formula Pacific for 3 years. They started with the Ralt, that's the Dean Cockerton car. They came through with the Swift last year and had some great performances. Just battled at the end there with Smith for the National Championship, which of course Ken Smith won. And this year they're staking their claim. They've been the people to beat. The car has been the pole setter at Wellington.
They've had a huge gap back to third place behind Radisich as they come up over the Mobile Mountain. Once again, down the start-finish line. Looks like it's going to be Craig Beard who'll get the checkered flash time, and Craig Beard wins the Phillips Car Stereo Formula Pacifics. Paul Radisich second, and coming for third place in what was a very exciting race. It'll be
Kenny Smith,
Kenny
the Castrol Swift.
Present live coverage of the 1991 Peter Jackson New Zealand Grand Prix.
Very good afternoon to you. Hi and welcome to Pukekohe on Grand Prix Day for 1991. We've had some rain this morning and we look skyward, hopefully, that it will not be wet for the big Grand Prix race. One of the things about this series, which I've followed since the outset 6 weeks ago, is that it is a really tight battle. Nobody really has dominated. The point's so close at the top end, and it's going to come to the 1991 Grand Prix, the last of the series, to decide who wins the championship, not just the Grand Prix. Let's meet some of the leading competitors in this big race. Pole today, Mark Smith, the young American, in the Graham Lawrence team car. One of two Americans driving for Graham Lawrence, a Swift DB4, and he has pole at 56.8, Toyota powered. This is Craig Baird, who has been dominant with Ken Smith in the series throughout for the last 6 weeks. Swift DB4, Toyota powered again, and Craig Baird, the young up-and-comer. This is Ken Smith, veteran. This is the only Ford BDA powered Swift DB4, and he certainly is going to be a fellow to beat in the Grand Prix and in the preliminary race today. Paul Radicic, we all know him. He's been away and driving saloon cars, but back in the Reynard 90H, which they finally got sorted, and he'll be another to contend with off the Mike Berg, the second of the Graham Lawrence team cars, a Swift DB4, Toyota powered again, and Mike Berg improving with each race. Sandy Dells is the older American in the series. He's been slightly off the pace at most of the circuit so far, driving a Swift DB4, and again it is Toyota powered. Well, as is the case in the modern era anyway, for the Grand Prix there is one race, but for the championship there are 2 races on Grand Prix Day. The preliminary was held just a little while ago. Let's look now at the highlights and look at the points as they went into the first of the day. There are 3 in contention. Ken Smith with the lead by 12 from Craig Baird, and then Paul Radicic a further 12 back. And the points are such that you get 20 for first, 15 second, 12 for third, 10 for fourth, and 8 for fifth. So really what Ken Smith needs to do is finish 1 place behind Craig Baird in each race. The engine revs build as we wait for the start of the 20-lapper, waiting for the green light. And the big dash down through Champion and the Castrol, and Mark Smith did not get a good start. Craig Baird is away, and Ken Smith is stalled on the line, and Dean Cockerton. And that is not a tidy start at all. Barry Tomlinson's also got his hand up. Dean Cockerton is stalled right on the line. They're going to let them away,
Green light
though.
come on. Well, I don't know, Tony. I'm not sure the green light came on there. For sure, Ken Smith didn't move. That was the start of that particular drama. Mike Berg got bogged down. That caused another drama further down. But Dean Cockerton just went right into the back of Ken Smith. It has to happen. The driver throws his hand up. We'll get this on replay. But I am sure that Smith was wondering whether that light came on. We had a problem like this at Manfield.
Now the flag marshal is running across the track looking for a red flag. And he's gone back again.
Well, the race is still in progress, that's for sure. Dean Cockerton's car's been pulled to his place. So Craig Baird has control.
The flag marshal still has the red flag in his hand, and he is still debating whether to pull it out to stop the race, but they're going to let him go. So Craig Baird in the lead by a good margin from Paul Radicic, then Mike Berg, Sandy Dells behind him, Barry Flett up there, Steve Richards, Bob Donaldson, Barry Tomlinson, as they all file through. Let's have a look at the start again. That was a shambles. Now have a look at Mark Smith, didn't even get his foot on it. Kenny Smith got punted in the back, I think, and there was considerable confusion with the entire field as to whether or not green light went on at that start. They are experienced drivers, not novices.
Well, no doubt about Craig Baird leading from Paul Radicic, from Mike Berg in car number 4. Don't be confused by the number 1 on the side as well there, car number 4, Mike Berg. So that must have been Mark Smith who got held up in the second incident with Barry Tomlinson after the original Ken Smith incident. So Craig Baird in the Toyota car streaking away now. There wasn't really much much doubt in many people's eyes before today that the Swift car would be superior to the Reynard. In fact, most people believe that Paul Radisich was the only reason that he was getting the Shell car up there. So Craig Baird seemingly in control. Ken Smith in the race, but he's back out 9th place, 8th or 9th place, and realistically he can't pull through the field like he did Timaru, Tony.
We'll see if we can get a word from them about that start. But I think there was considerable confusion down there. As a result of which, Smithy is trapped back in the field and has got an enormous task now to try and make up enough places to keep his points intact.
At the moment, the crew's too busy to talk to me, but the news for Ken Smith's pit is very, very bad indeed. Apparently, he lost first gear on the line. He has now reported in that he has lost fifth gear. That's fifth gear that Ken Smith has lost. Things aren't looking very good to Ken Smith at all. Back to you.
Thank you, Graham. That information from the pits, Dean Cockerton and Ken Smith not getting off the line, and Mark Smith with the same problem. So perhaps it wasn't all clear and a green, and just the broken gear that held Ken back. Hard to believe when so many people had a problem on the line, though.
Well, Kenny's come up to 6th place, so he's moved up into the points that are relative to Craig Baird. 20-15-12 for first, second and third in 10-8-6. So 6 points to 20. What does they give? 12 points. They would come out of this race exactly equal going into the Grand Prix if they finish in this order. And that would make grandstand race for the final championship round, the New Zealand Grand Prix, the Peter Jackson Grand Prix.
Number 70.
That may be a legacy of the earlier incident on the grid, but it's the rear body section's broken in half behind the headrest, spun around, and it's just lying on the exhaust system.
And he's going to see a black flag fairly shortly, I would think.
Well, you have to have things colour coordinated, don't you, Tony?
I doubt very much, though, that the course officials will allow him to stay out with that piece of loose bodywork.
Let's assume that they see it, Tony.
Well, nobody's given him a black flag yet, so they're letting him continue.
This angle from our side of the track is quite apparent from the inside where the officials are, may not be so clear.
Time on Ken Smith, 1 minute, .75, so he's well off the pace.
We mentioned that Craig Baird had a gearbox problem last year. One of the reasons for this is these little cars, Swift cars, have what's called a lightweight transmission. That's different from the transmission in the other car picture, Steve Richards. Now, these lightweight transmissions made in England have very, very small gears in comparison to the good old Ralph gears. I see the starter there with the flag in hand, getting ready for a finish for Craig Baird, the preliminary. Craig Baird takes it away. A long gap back to Paul Radisich in the Reynard car. Crossing the line right now, not sounding all healthy. Maybe just accelerating throttle. And we literally have to wait for another 10-15 seconds for Mike Bird to come in third in the number 2 Graham Lawrence car.
And now we're going to get out the little calculators and start doing sums and see what Ken Smith needs to get himself back up there. But it would appear that his championship has fallen away.
Yes, we've lost first gear off line and then got shunted at the line through not getting away, and also lost top gear after about 4 laps, so we were panicking in there and get some points in your own.
I understand there's actually damage to the gearbox casing.
Yeah, we're going to have to have gone home to get another part of a case off another guy's gearbox.
Oh, but what, is this a gearbox you just happen to have in the garage?
It belongs to an American that's left it here. It's being shipped out next week, so we'll have to rate it.
You feeling a bit knocked around by this, I guess?
No, I'm all out. As far as I'm concerned, I'm going all out to win the Grand Prix, and that'll get me to the series. But if I don't, well, Craig will get it, and good luck to him.
Yeah, that's it, isn't it? You have to win that race, or else.
That's right. I'm 2 points behind now.
Feel pressured by it?
No pressure. More pressure makes me get wound up better.
I think it comes down to who wins the Grand Prix, who wins the series now, so it's out of Kenny and I, and we're just hoping for a good race like we had the first one. You know, it's very important for us to win the series, and especially the Grand Prix, because, you know, unless I can get sponsorship to do it again, this is probably my last season.
You feeling at all pressured at the moment?
There's always pressure on a driver to do well in a race, you know. It's just, Kenny always says there's no pressure on him, but you know, there's pressure there, and there's pressure in our camp as well. You know, both camps are working frantically to make sure the cars are 100%, and just pressure all around.
Because it's really a sort of a double strike, isn't it? I mean, you want to win the Grand Prix and you want to win the series, and you've got one race to do it in.
Yeah, it makes it pretty hard. You know, there's a lot of money riding on one race, and a lot of trophies and everything else. So it's just it's probably the most important race in my career right now. So we'll just have to give it our best shot.
And you couldn't wish for a better finish. The big crowd here at Pukekohe on a fine and sunny, if a little breezy afternoon. Has been an excellent crowd all day, and they've been ended with some superb races. But you couldn't wish for a better finish to the series. After 6 weeks of racing, it still comes down to the last race, the New Zealand Grand Prix, the big finale to decide who wins the championship. So not just Grand Prix at stake here, David Oxton. And I know that's something that you always wanted to win, and I guess every driver always wanted to win, but it's a championship as well here.
Well, as you said, both titles are on the line. The big one is the Grand Prix. But Ken Smith, Craig Baird, the young fella, and the, what should we call him? The teacher, the master and the teacher, whatever it is. But certainly, I wouldn't like to put my money any way. You know, right now, I know there seems to be pressure on Kenny. The gearbox is all fixed, of course. Craig must have a psychological feeling that he's going to go quick. Mark Smith, well, he's the rabbit in there. I mean, I don't think he can go very, very fast and pull out and win this race. But the crucial gap is the one where Smith and Baird finish in relation to each other.
This is the fella, Paul Radisich, that might upset things and get between them. This car, the Reynard 90, has come right as the race has gone on. Here's Ken Smith, who has had to rush away from the circuit to go home and get a gearbox casing and come back again.
Awfully big crescent there, tightening something up in there. I wonder what it's got. I didn't know there were any big nuts in the car. That
Bit of a worry, isn't it? Ken always goes well when he's fired up. There's Barry Tomlinson, last year's Rookie of the Year, who has performed very well indeed and has battled with the two Americans, Marks and Mike Berg. Ian McDonald, Bob Donaldson, Steve Richards, Sandy Dells, Heather Spurl, Dean Cockerton, who had a stall on the grid in the first race. This really has shaped up as a wonderful champion. I think that Global, the promoters, I think their idea of starting in Invercargill and working their way north has worked perfectly for them. They couldn't have had a better championship in terms of the way the points have gone and the way the races have gone in Pacifics and in Formula Fords.
Of course, Mr. Mark, for Ford fans and Toyota fans, is this going to be the first race in something like 15 years that hasn't been won by a Ford power car? Toyota have amassed a big challenge this year. As we said, they're in all the other cars, except in Ken Smith, the cars that matter, that is. And, well, the guns are going all blazing. The cars are really firing well. They're reliable, Toyota power cars. But Ken Smith, as we know in the past, never underestimate him. His little Swift Ford is going like a champion.
And the interest here, too, is on the grid. The grid is unchanged because qualifying was quite fast and the first race was relatively slow. So still Mark Smith, then Craig Baird, Ken Smith, Paul Radisich, Mike Berg, Sandy Dells, Barry Tomlinson, Barry Flett, Dean Cockerton, Steve Richards, Ross Heffernan, McDonald, Heather Spurl, then Donaldson and Elwood. That's the way the lineup was in the first race. And it is interesting because it means that Mark Smith, who is not the best of starters, has three little terriers, if you like, snapping at his heels, two of whom are very good starters in Craig Baird and Paul Radisich. Ken Smith is not the best of starters, but it's going to be hard. It's going to be hard for him to hold on to that line through the first and last section and into Castrol.
Just a change in the international rules, the way that single-seater races work. 2 warm-up laps, but if you to stop in the pit, you may, but you must go through the pit complex and then rejoin the circuit. We have to fall into line with international rules. This circuit is and does race under international rules. It's an international circuit. We're controlled by the FISA from France, and as such, all our jurisdiction, all our controls are printed overseas.
And I guess to them it doesn't really matter a hell of a lot if it rained like anything, or if you had a crash, or if you got slowed down. The rules are the rules, and no matter what the promoter, the crowd or television wants, you must have a gap, which is why this race is running late, because the there must be a 2-hour gap between the two races to allow those people to rejoin who need to do work.
Apologise, viewers, to that bringing attention to that fact. A big crash in the Formula Ford race this morning caused necessary repairs to the Armco protective fencing, just to the right picture there now. And hopefully the drivers are recovering well. The injuries weren't too serious, but the circuit had to be brought up to safety standard for all concerned. That delayed first preliminary race, and as such, we've got a little bit late off with the Grand Prix.
Now, the other races that are not on today, that are on the program today, but not on your telly today, will be on next week. That's Formula Ford and Trans Ams and the other classes that have been racing throughout the series. Down on the grid there will be some nervous drivers, some high pulse rates, some intense looks underneath the helmets. Craig Baird, who is cool, very cool, before the start of a race. He really just zeroes in concentration. He chats quietly to the guys in the crew. He's had a superb series, although he didn't start it very well at Invercargill. He had a little off. He got upset about that. He's come back with a vengeance. As they came into today's racing, Ken Smith led him by 12 points. But the man on pole, another Smith, Mark Smith, who was here 2 years ago racing with the Graham Lawrence team. He has been, I would have to say, if you're being completely honest, he has been something of a disappointment this year. We expected that 2 years down the track he would have improved the same way as someone like Davy Jones. He hasn't. But this has been his circuit. He got pole here. He hasn't had one previously. And he shut out Craig Baird on the outside, Ken Smith behind him, and then Paul Radisich. There's Smithy, 49 years old, racing for 33 years in the only Ford BDA-powered car on the front end of the grid. Barry Flett is also in a Ford-powered car, but he's not really in contention. He's leading the trade. Paul Radisich, thumbs up. He's happy. The Reynards come right time. He had a big fire at Timaru, very spectacular. It almost got his backside burned. He hopped out in a hurry, I can tell you. I was standing right beside it. But the car has got sorted as the series has gone on, and he has been professional enough as a driver to be able to cope with that and to give signals back to his crew on what needed improving in what direction. There's Mike Berg, who's a bit of a wild driver, a bit of a wild character, really. He can do the odd quick lap here and there, but he has not yet learned the consistency. I'll tell you what he has learned is a hell of a lot of race lines off Ken Smith. Almost every circuit in the series, you'll see him out there walking round or driving round with Kenny Smith, saying you go a little wide here, you touch this curb, you get flat on it there. Sandy Dell's something of a veteran these days, the older American, who has had competitive machinery but hasn't been quite on the pace. And in Formula Pacifics, you have to say that somebody who's slightly off the pace like him looks a lot worse than they are, because a tiny gap after 40 laps is a big gap. This is Barry Tomlinson, last year's Rookie of the Year, and I think Dave Oxton, he really has been the improver of the series for me, the best of the upcoming Kiwis.
Well, he's trying hard to get into that top group, so to speak, but today, Peter Jackson Grand Prix, I believe it's a 4-horse race. It's got to be Mark Smith. Barry Flett on screen now there in the South Auckland Motors car. That's a Ken Smith type car. It's the Swift Ford. Then there's Cockerton.
This car here, for me, takes the prize for sign writing. It is sponsored by a sign outfit, but isn't it great?
That's the first Pacific car which Craig Baird raced, and it's a Ralt RT4, something of a veteran now. In the back frame there, Steve Richards came into picture in the blue car. But here's my pick. Mark Smith, if he gets off the line, will go like crazy. We'll try to clear out. Baird may be happy to let him do that as long as the pace is good. I maintain that Ken Smith would be happy just try and glue himself onto the tail of Craig Baird, and I realistically can't see Paul Radisich sticking the pace out, hacking it all the way. Not because Paul Radisich can't. I don't think the Reynard on this circuit is quite up with those fabulous Swifts.
The problem that they've had in the Reynard throughout the series, biggest problem initially was straight line speed. And there is no circuit in the country where straight line speed is more important than in Pukekohe. And certainly what that comes down to is the compromise with what angle you have the on, because it's a compromise between downforce and straight line speed. But I guess that we have to give credit to Paul Radisich. and his professionalism, his ability as a driver to have got that car as far up the grid as he has.
Well, we treat him as a youngster, Tony, but he's been racing these cars 8 years now, 8 years in this country. First Grand Prix in 1982.
And he's 28 years old now, too.
Well, he knows the tricks. But Craig Baird, I guess, he's broken into the establishment. He's registered his concerns and desires to be right up there last year. Gave Ken Smith a real good run for me in the South Island events. But they all want this one because this is the one that gets in the press overseas. We've got one of the top autosport magazines over here, Marcus Pye, and he's giving us good publicity overseas on how competitive New Zealand is. And these boys want to be in that magazine because that's how they get heard by the team managers and get seen.
It's a bit like a model trying to make a career and really wanting to get in Sports Illustrated swimsuit edition. It really makes a difference, and if you can get in a prestigious magazine that every self-respecting petrol head in the world has an email subscription to, like Autosport, then it makes a difference. It makes a big difference to a career.
Now remember the problems that Smith had in the first preliminary race. The gears broke, first gears broke, and caused big problems. The right amount of power has to be fed on. So watch for the start in the Peter Jackson Grand Prix.
New Zealand's 1991 Grand Prix. The Peter Jackson New Zealand Grand Prix, the final of the series. And this is where the championship will be decided. 40 laps. Certainly it is going to be a race of tactics. The engine revs rise now, waiting for the start up the line. And Mark Smith, a slow start again. Craig Baird gets it. And Ken Smith tries to go the outside. Smithy in third place. Radisson a slow start. A good sprint off the line. And Baird certainly got the jump on Mark Smith.
Well, that's just the scenario Ken Smith did not want. He did not want Mark Smith coming as the blocker, allowing Baird to streak away and get that gap that he didn't certainly want to give away at this point. Baird is streaking away.
Have a look at Smithy at the end of the straight. Ken Smith up on Mark Smith. Going through the curve and up towards the end of the straight. Smithy will have a go on the outside, but he won't do it from there. Mark Smith takes the line, all of which is allowing Mark Smith to get away on the lead. Craig Baird, should I say, on the lead. Smith and Smith, second and third. Mark Smith, the American. Ken Smith, the Kiwi veteran. In fourth place. So watch as they come through down past the start finish line. Baird, Smith, Radisich, then Berg, Dells, Tomlinson, Flett, Richards. That's a good lineup of Pacific cars. Certainly it's all come alive for this last race. Having a look at that start again. Mark Smith, not a good start. Have a look at where Ken Smith went. He pushed Radisich away.
Ken was lucky to keep Radisich out there, Tony. He just cranked over at the right time.
But Baird was the winner of that start.
Well, Mark Smith is not showing the electric pace that he showed in the first preliminary, or should we say in the warm-up. It was magnificent speed down through Champion. It seemed that Baird had no answer for him, but right now Baird is being allowed to sneak away, and seemingly Ken Smith hasn't got an answer to climb the back of Mark Smith yet.
I would have expected Ken Smith to be making ground on Mark Smith by now. He does appear to be making a hole at all. And look at Baird as they go down the back straight, not pulling as much in this lap as he did in the previous one. The other drivers are they've all got warm tyres now. They're all confident under brakes and through the corners. Mark Smith pulling back a little on that one.
Mark Smith ranging around under braking there, which is just disturbing Ken Smith's attempts to try and pass him. That's the sort of thing that Ken Smith doesn't need. He wants to know where a guy is going to be and where he's going to stay. Because each time that happens, only a tenth or two, but Baird inches away.
Radisich hanging on in fourth place there too. Equal spaces, first, second, third, fourth. Then Berg in fifth, Tomlinson sixth, Barry Flett, Sandy Knowles, Then Steve Richards, Bob Donaldson, Heather Spurl, Dean Cockerton, and Ian McDonald. Grant Elwood bring the tail.
Well, this is the attack that we probably would have expected earlier on. Mark Smith now, a little bit of pre-race nerves. He's having a go at Baird down the outside, or is he just having a look?
That will help Ken Smith. If those two can dice, if Baird is forced to drive defensive lines, that is exactly what Ken Smith will want. As we saw at Anfield a couple of weeks ago, you get the front two guys dicing, and third place can actually slip through both of them.
But it requires Ken Smith to keep his game up, and he's dropped back a few tenths there. He must keep in touch. It's not enough just to be able to hold back. He must keep in touch. But Mark Smith, young guy, a little bit older than Craig Baird. Craig's only 20. Mark's about 23 now, 24. But he's as eager as any of the young fellas to have a go and win this Grand Prix. His form has improved dramatically. He hasn't raced well, as Tony said earlier, in any of the 5 races. And talking confidentially, here's a bit of a moment here for Ian McDonald in the Aztec route. Let's see if it can catch what happens. Now, in fact, it's Dean Cockerton. He's gone off, gone wide on the exit of the hairpin. No damage done. He's back on.
Not a happy day, though, Dean Cockerton, is he? As Craig Baird continues to pull just a tiny gap each time. We'll put the clock on and see what the gaps are for you each lap and see if he improves.
Well, this Mark Smith fella came from nowhere, Tony, today. What's that time there?
0.7 first to second, and just second and a bit between first and third.
Well, Paul Radisich, Kenny Smith nearly went off. He got way out of line. I'd say he's got a broken suspension joint, because when he accelerated, it turned hard right. What's his position now? Is he slowed or is he picked up? He's fallen back into the clutches of Paul Radisich. We'll watch that place, but look at Mark Smith. He's putting pressure on Baird. He's not allowing Baird to have the nice lines. Baird looks in control, though. He's not out. He's not getting untidy. So what's happening in Ken Smith's concern in his rear end? Does something come a drop? Or does he just got a bit wild coming out of the railway? Well, you might be asking, well, where has this Mark Smith come from? As we said, in the whole series, he's done absolutely nothing. To be fair, he has just not had the motivation that we want. Kenny's car is very loose. It's not to his liking at all. We'll keep an eye on that. But finishing off with Mark Smith, it's almost as if, and I had to talk with Graham Lawrence last night, there's that spin of Kenny's, or near spin. He saved it well, but he overcorrected. It's almost as if it's like it's got a broken axle or a broken CV or something. I'm sure he's not happy with it. But Graham Lawrence got into Mark Smith's ear and said these cars are not big trucks like you race in the States. They are finely tuned pieces of magical equipment. You drive them smoothly to make them go fast. And he got it all together at Pukekohe, and suddenly he was doing electrifying times. Now he's actually racing for the lead in the New Zealand Grand Prix. A pair of Swift Toyotas leading the Grand Prix from Ken Smith in a Swift Ford and Paul Radisich in a Reynard Toyota.
Ken Smith has lost almost 2 seconds just in the last lap. So with that near off, we'll check again and just see if he is falling off the pace.
Well, I guess it could be a good old-fashioned puncher. We don't have many of these problems these days. We run control tyres. Let's keep an eye on Mark Smith now, ranging up on the outside of Smith. On Baird. He doesn't seem to have the ability to actually use the slip into his advantage, but it's good that he can keep the pressure on Baird, making sure that Baird isn't going to run away with this race.
It's a great old battle, and it's quite a while since we've seen two Pacifics as close in touch as these guys are. Just looking at the times, I'd have to say that Ken Smith has actually got back on it, because he's closed the gap from 3 to 2.5. That's the gap first to third.
As I said, talking with Graham Lawrence, he said, David, these guys are suffering from what we call a motivational problem. They don't seem to have the urge, and I was quite surprised as a team manager. They don't usually, what should we say, put down their drivers, but the Yanks, we call them the Yanks, Mike Berg and Mark Smith, haven't been firing as hard as we would have expected. Well, finally, I'd say Graham has been listened to, and the results are very, very clear. This is the Mark Smith we remember from 2 years ago. 8 laps down, and 2 seconds the gap now. It's back to Ken Smith. Baird a little bit untidy going in there. He's feeling the pressure.
It was Mark Smith, so the two of them pressuring each other, and I wonder if in fact that is allowing Kenny to catch, because the last taps he's picked up nearly half a second.
Never underestimate the old guy, eh? No race is over for Ken Smith until the flag drops, and he's back in race. Paul Radisich, unfortunately, just can't run with that front group. But Ken Smith can, and he's back on the group. And he'll be watching this battle royal. He probably knows that it's only 8 laps down and 40 laps of this race, so 32 to go. He's going to let these guys see if they find a bit of a fault with each other, maybe take each other off. It's not impossible.
Check the gap this time. And down to 1.6 from 3 seconds in 2.5 laps. So Smithy is certainly on the chase, and you'll see in your picture in a moment he's back in touch, and this race is alive, as the championship is.
Well, the man who holds the key to this race is Mark Smith, because he's sitting in a position which is enough at the moment to give Craig Baird the championship over Ken Smith. But anything that happens up front there must favour Ken Smith.
Let's go down to the Ken Smith pit, see what they've got to say at the moment on his lap times.
Down in the pit here, I'm with Mark Lee, Ken Smith's manager. Mark, how are things going at the moment?
Ken's happy with the car. It's got a little bit of oversteer, but he's pleased with it, so we'll see what we can do.
What's the game plan from here on, Mark?
Just stick with the leaders and see if we can get past. Hopefully win the race.
Well, so that's the Kenny Smith game plan. Have to see if the experience can last out till the end of the race. Back to the commentary team.
Nice to hear that they're all happy.
Ken Smith is right on him now, Tony. Look at that gap. Down to point 9. Well, we know he's going to make a move. As he alongside, he's gone by. Mark Smith slowing. He's in trouble. No smoke, no oil, but something has gone wrong. And now it's back to the Kiwis. Craig Baird and Ken Smith are fighting it out. 30 laps of this New Zealand Grand Prix left.
Well, good gracious me, how many times has it been said? How many times in the last 20 years have we... Kenny Smith has never given it away until he's parked in the pits.
Well, we like to keep our rules nice and simple in motorsport. This is not yachting or cricket or golf or tennis. If the guy in the front here wins today, he wins the championship and the New Zealand Grand Prix. If the guy is second, the guy second on your track now wins, he wins it. So there's the focus for this race.
0.6 now, the gap between them. And if Ken Smith can make up that much in 3 laps, my goodness.
Now, Smith was a lot tidier through the turn that time. Ken Smith was on line, looking after his rear tyres. Baird was out of line. Now, here's Mark Smith coming in. Graham Lawrence leaping to the car there in the white hat.
Just trying to have a look and see what the problem is. They're looking at electrics, I suspect. Electrical problem earlier on. Checking the plugs there.
There's been a misfire, Tony. We couldn't hear it from here, but when you go to the plug leads, it's usually because it's missing. So, an unfortunate thing, he lost the camshaft yesterday, over-revved the engine, so driver error, and that gap is so close now, it's not even worth using a watch, Tony. There's the gap. And Smithy is doing what he's been known for too many years now, putting the pressure on people, leaning on them, making them make mistakes.
As he says, if I can get on his gearbox, I can rattle him. He'll do this, he'll sit there, he'll hop out left and hop out right. He makes Craig Baird look for him in his mirrors. He shows him on one side, and he shows him on the other side. And then hopefully he can have a go at it. Applying pressure. And he is so damn good at it.
I can't help but think that Ken's got the best line, though. He came out with track to spare there. He's doing it easier. I don't know why. It certainly didn't look that way earlier on. But he's using parts of the track which would suggest that he's not having to try as hard as Craig Baird.
Smithy does look comfortable now, doesn't he? That car doesn't seem to be oversteering as badly as it was. And Radicic, I'll check gap for you between these front two and Radicic. We'll go down to the pits in the meantime. Graham Lawrence is down there.
Down in the pits with me is Graham Lawrence, an incredibly experienced driver in his own right, runner of racing teams nowadays. Graham, we saw Mark come in a few minutes ago. What's the problem?
There's a little bracket that's on top of the plug leads, and it had fractured and allowed the plug lead basically to come adrift from the mounting of it. So we've just quickly bunged it in, but that's the racing goes, I guess.
Sure is. That's the second lot of electrical type problems you've had today, isn't it?
Yeah, we had a wire this morning. A wire fractured because there's quite a lot of vibration in the car, and went to change the clutch with a few minutes ago for the first heat, and when we put it together we obviously missed out with locating the wire properly, and it's just flicked up on the exhaust and it fused the whole circuit. So these are one of the things. We'll just give it a shot next year. There's always next year. Yeah.
So hard luck for the Graham Lawrence team and for Mark Smith. Mike Berg, of course, their other driver, is still out there plugging away. Hard luck for Mark Smith, having qualified on pole though.
Kenny lost some valuable metres there going into the railway. He could see that it was just getting a bit out of shape. He slowed off, took a bit of pressure off it, but allowed Baird to creep away. But Kenny can pull up under brakes here, and he gets back on that pressure. I was about to say before, the way that the car of Baird's is unsteady, he's under so much pressure from Ken Smith. I wouldn't be surprised to see Baird go off. I mean, this sort of pressure, intense pressure, especially if the rear end of Baird's car keeps moving around like it does. It wouldn't take one little moment to get out of line, and away he'd go. Traffic now, they're moving it through slow cars, and this has got to be clean, decisive passing by the guys. Steve Richardson, no problem. The passing will occur on the back straight for both of them, I'm sure. They'll move to the right.
In the pits here, the Spurl there. She wasn't really on the pace, although she had been running quite well, that Pukekohe here. But it looks as though any chance she had of getting in the placings is on. As the battle there with Ken Smith, he has a look at the outside and a lock up from Baird. And the pressure's starting to work. It really is starting to tell on Craig Baird, the young Hamiltonian. And Smithy, more than anyone else in this field, knows how to apply sustained pressure to force the errors. And Craig Baird will have something to think about there.
Well, what a wish, Craig Baird, to leave the circuit. I want this race to go on. Now that's a fist. It's a stop. Ken Smith is out. The speed with which that happened would suggest that he's lost oil pressure. It happened very, very quickly, and he was very clear with his decision. He's out of the New Zealand Grand Prix, and then hands it over to Craig Baird. Well, is he running? Is he driving? I guess not. He's just parking it safely so it doesn't get hit. We'll get some idea when Kenny jumps out. What he looks at will give us some clues as to what may be the problem. Baird going through Bob Donaldson now. He's lapping a lot of cars now. And the pressure's all gone. He's been let off the hook.
And good on Craig Baird. Good on him for withstanding the pressure. He looked a little hairy there. He looked like he was on the ragged edge. Paul Radicic is now in second place. But Craig Baird, well done. He withstood all the pressure for as long as Ken was able, and his Ken would allow him to apply it. Now Smithy's out. Mark Smith is out as well. And it comes down to these two. And Radicic really is not in a position to be able to get that close. He may be able to work away at it. He was closing up the gap before. And a little roundy round there for Ian McDonald.
Mark Smith, of course, rejoined after a little bit of surgery there in the pits, but not realistically in contention. Radicic here moving through the same tail enders as Craig Baird just did. But hey, we're only halfway through, and a bit of nail-biting time for the Baird crew now. Whilst that pressure from a driver you're behind, sometimes that's better to keep you alive, because what you now have to do is almost go into a defensive mold of saying, how slow can I drive this car to win without falling off the road through not thinking what I'm doing? And literally, he's going to have to keep his eyes on that gap back to Paul Radisich. Paul's not exactly hanging around, and he must also look out for slower cars. Here's Dean Cockington in front, and if he just made a moment of the wrong judgment, it could take Craig Baird out, but no problems. Dean Cockington moves over. Paul Radisich, I'd say that's pretty close to 4 seconds behind. The gap is closer than it's been.
So Craig Baird now in the lead, as he likes, of the New Zealand Grand Prix, with the pressure having been taken off him. Paul Radisich moving up in second place, and Radisich has closed that gap substantially, almost, and are coming together with Dean Cockington. Cockington getting wide-tailed out of the gap, and how much it is closed between Craig Baird and Paul Radisich.
I've got to hope that that's the only way that the fact that Craig Baird is regulating the gap. But these Toyota cars now have got control. Toyota's first, Toyota's second, and Toyota's third.
The battle continues and gets interesting in the 1991 New Zealand Grand Prix. We'll be back shortly, where the interest now raises its head again, because Craig Baird is losing ground to Paul Radisich. He stood the pressure from Ken Smith. Ken Smith's demise, seen in your picture, he's out of the race, and he's looking at something on the car, and now Paul Radisich has taken up the challenge where he left off and has closed the gap now to 1.5 seconds between Baird and himself.
Well, maybe something electrical, maybe some switch turned itself off, or a wire came off, or something of that nature. And obviously, if Kenny thinks it's worth staying there and trying to rectify it, it mustn't be too major. Craig Baird can't relax too much. The little Shell Toyota Reynard is snapping at his heels now. And Paul Radisich in a Grand Prix here before, so he knows how to do it. And there is no real love lost between these two guys, Tony. I can tell you, they really, I guess it's competitive stuff. In a few years' time, they'll probably laugh about it. But right now, there's a fair amount of needle between these two, and I'm sure they both happily beat the other if they could.
And certainly Paul Radisich has a bit of a point to prove with the Reynard. He's taken so much over the fact that he was driving a Reynard and not a Swift. Everybody told him he had made the wrong choice. So he has a bit of a point to prove in terms of making it competitive. And that gap now 1.7, so he's made no impression on the last lap.
But there's one other important thing at stake here for Craig Baird. I guess wherever he finishes, as long as he finishes, he becomes the New Zealand Gold Star champion and takes that title for the first time, and that's a nice little trophy to have on your shelf. In doing so, he will deprive Ken Smith of doing it for a record-breaking 6 times.
So just past the halfway point now in the New Zealand Grand Prix. Craig Baird still doing it reasonably tidily. He seemed to get off the gas there after the from Kenny went.
Well, that gap's got to be closing up, Tony.
It seems to close up on one side and then lose it again on the other. We'll check it again this time as they come over the hill and down to the start-finish line. 1.78 seconds last time round. 1.73 this time, so reasonably consistent.
Both of the drivers are the ones aspiring to be the McLarens, the Amons, the Holmes of the 1990s. Paul Radisich, your screen, has been in testing in last year. He was testing a Reynard Formula 3000 car, looking for the important skills and openings that will allow him to go back and race in Europe, or so he hopes. And of course, Craig Baird is now tenterhooks, waiting to hear if he's going to get a Formula 3 drive with the renowned Formula 3 guru, so big, Kiwi Dick Bennett in the West Surrey racing team. And he'll be hoping a result out here, like winning the New Zealand Grand Prix, will help him with the sponsorship necessary to ensure a full year's racing in the Formula 3 British Championship. So a lot hanging on the race now for these two guys.
The gap again as they come down this time. No, in fact, he's losing lost ground just on that last lap. Laps from up. The battle continues between Craig Baird and Paul Radisich. These two have pulled a big margin now on the rest of the field. Certainly very little spectator interest in who's further down the line, because everyone knew that the championship rested, as did the New Zealand Grand Prix, on the battle between Craig Baird and Ken Smith. That no longer exists, and Craig Baird looks assured if he continue with the nice smooth lines, unlike that one. He looks assured of taking the championship and the Grand Prix today. Let's go down to the pits and Graham Booth and get a word from down there.
At the moment, it's a bit hard to tell exactly what happened to Ken Smith. He hasn't actually arrived back. The throttle or something like that's gone. I understand the next thing was an expletive, and they heard no more. Very clearly, Kenny is out. It's something to do with it. Exactly what it is. Graham Booth from the pits.
Well, I hope you heard some of what he said there, Tony. I heard something about throttle cables and suspension, but it would suggest it's a throttle cable breaking. Certainly, it was like someone had turned off the key.
Craig Baird still staying that same distance in the last 3 laps away from Paul Radisich in second place. Radisich appeared to be closing the gap. I imagine that Baird's pit will have told him what the gaps were, and if he had got off the gas, and it appeared that he had from the lap times, he's now picked up the pace again. And it remains to be seen whether Radisich can respond to that increased pace.
Coming up for 3/4 distance now, 28 laps in the Peter Jackson New Zealand Grand Prix. And of course, Paul Radisich is the only man with a realistic chance of hounding Craig Baird into an error. It certainly appears at times as if Craig Baird's car gets untidy going in. I know this morning he wasn't happy with the suspension. He was asking his engineer, Stefan, whether there was a problem in the rear shock absorbers or whether it was tyres. And it's a hard thing to do, to make a decision on whether you change the suspension going on to the race after you've set it up. It just, sometimes drivers don't like to do it. Craig Baird there going past Growlwood in the old route. Paul Radisich does the same. Grant Elwood, of course, known as the flame crusher man. In all the other days of the week, Grant Elwood makes all the fire overalls for the drivers out there, and some big ones, some small ones. I remember in the days gone by when Prime Minister Longy drove in Fords during the production car series many years ago.
Okay, as Craig Baird continues and doesn't look like making an error, we understand that Martin Crowe is a 90-odd at the cricket. We'll go over there for a moment and see if he can make the big tut. Okay, we'll go to the cricket in a moment. We'll wait till young Martin Crowe gets a little closer to his century. There's Ken Smith returning to the pits. And we'll be able to find out definitely what it was. He obviously repaired it well enough to get back that far.
Well, Ken Smith would like us to stop the Grand Prix and have a cup of tea while we went to cricket, I'm sure.
Hard luck for the old fella. He won it last year. He won back in 1976. So I guess that's more than Craig Baird has got against his name so far. And I'm sure he'll be the first to congratulate Craig Baird on being able to do it on the day. He was his mentor for a long time, as he was with Paul Radisich.
one of the problems that occurred earlier in the day, as we told you earlier, was that Ken Smith had a gearbox problem. And because Ken Smith loans everything to everyone, one of the things that he loaned to Craig Baird at Timaru 4 meetings ago was his gearbox. And it was on the understanding that, well, Craig, you'll give us back if I need it. But before the Grand Prix, it's a little bit tough to say, hey, give us a gearbox. And Ken Smith just took off home out there to Manurewa and just hooked out a spare one out of the garage and threw it in. He's been so helpful to so many drivers. Let's go over to Ken Smith and find out exactly what happened with Graham Booth.
With now is a very, very dejected, brassed off. I don't know quite if English language got the word. Kenny.
Last 10 laps of this race, Tony, and that pressure is coming on now because Baird is into a lock-up situation, so we know he's really trying. Paul Radicic has pulled that gap back to just over 3 seconds now.
Let's have a look as they come down and put a watch on it, although they're in the same picture. 1.1.
We've got a race back on hands. This is just like Formula Ford racing, except it's Formula Toyota. Formula Toyotas seem to have got control now of this Grand Prix. The Fords are back in the hands of Barry Flett and the other Ralts. But these guys, the two young chargers now, got the New Zealand Grand Prix in their hands, and let's see what they do with it.
Radicic's cool and composed enough to know that if he can get this close, he can do what Ken Smith was doing and apply the pressure. And he also knows that he's got that much more experience than Craig Baird, that he is able to withstand pressure probably better than Baird is. He can apply it like the old fella he learned off. And use the traffic if he can as well.
Well, that certainly worked for Craig Baird's favour because Radicic will be held up right through here now behind Barry Flett in the Swift Ford.
Radicic hops out and buys. They get into the back straight, but he certainly lost what he had gained in the previous couple of laps.
He should be able to pull up on brakes at the end, though, I think. The way he's been in previous laps, he's pulled most of his advantage right at the end of the chute and into the braking area. Yes, he's close back now, back less than 100 metres, more like 50 metres.
He was able to show Craig Baird the way 2 weeks, should I say, at Manfield, and he did it with great gusto and style.
Coming up on two slower cars now. Sandy Dowles and Steve Richards. Sandy Dowles from the USA in the black car, and Steve Richards, they're having their own private scrap. And Craig Baird slaps to go, and Radicic is right on Baird's tail. And there's two cars to pass, not one. This will be interesting. Dowles pulls out in front of Baird. Is he going to lose the momentum? This is the break that Radicic needed. Just a momentary lift of the throttle is all that Baird needs to lose the lead in this race. Baird through the gap. Sandy Dowles blocks the gap for Radicic. Great stuff. Very good driving on all part.
That was well done by Baird, wasn't it?
Radicic is through though, and he's got the line. He's lost a bit of the momentum he was hoping for. So that certainly went Baird's way. Now Radicic has to thread his way back and inch those tenths of a set back. 5 laps to go. Radicic all over him now, moving the Reynard, and he's ranging, putting that pressure on. So Craig Baird is in for a second dose of the treatment that he got from Ken Smith.
I tell you what, into this race, if Craig Baird does hang on and win, you have to say that he's matured immensely, the amount of pressure that he's withstood. Well, I can't think of any other Pacific race in recent years a person has had that much pressure directly applied. Look at that!
If he's going to raise his career to the heights of Formula 3 in Europe, he's going to have to handle pressure like this and some. And he's got to be able to lead races and win races in inferior cars from time to time. At the moment, everything is going Baird's way, but he hasn't got it yet. 4 laps to go, and Radicic is right there. Watch for that here. Radicic Radicic is on his tail. He's going down the inside. Not there. There's no room. We don't want another incident like the Mark Pedersen incident in the Formula Ford earlier today. Mark Pedersen tried to move to go through or around the car and spun out and lost the race, unfortunately. He won the earlier race, but the move on that corner has to be considered to be very opportunist.
He'll have another look under brakes at the end of the straight here, no doubt. Have a look and see how close he can get. But looking at that again, it certainly was worth the dive, if for no other reason than to appear in Baird's mirror and give him a bit of hurry up.
Well, it's semi-psycho, isn't it? What they're trying to do is to unsettle the guy and make sure that he knows that he can't make a move without considering the other driver. And certainly Craig Baird knows that now.
It appears that Radicic can't get that last couple of inches that he needs, though. And he's running out of laps on this circuit to do it.
May just have dropped back a bit, Tony. What you've got to do with these Formula Pacific cars is to not keep pressuring bang, 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 because all it does is overheat your car and your tyres and yourself. And if you drop back a bit, your tyres will break just for that split second. It might be just might be what he's doing.
What he was doing, certainly as a tactic at Luna, he was gaining ground by actually dropping back and then having another charge. It's a matter of timing it for the race, though.
Grant Elwood there getting lapped for the umpteenth time. Certainly he hasn't got the pace of the fast cars. The Toyota is dead. I'm sorry to say the pressure that Paul Radicic has put on that engine has now put it to death. And the last remaining challenge that Craig Baird had, 3 lap go in this New Zealand Grand Prix, and it goes the way, or at least it looks like going the way, of the 20-year-old from Hamilton in the Kicks electric car. All his opposition has gone from him. Let's trace through the places now. Of course, all that excitement and drama should have put Mike Berg up to second place. We'll try and trace it. Let's just watch what happens. He goes down to first gear. He hooks first gear. It's actually blown before. I shouldn't be so presumptuous. It's oil smoke. It might be an oil hose or an oil filter, but certainly you can be sure of one thing: there is not enough oil in that engine to make it go any further.
So winding down the laps now, the last challenge is gone for Craig Baird, and he's done well. I honestly think that Craig Baird deserves some plaudits, and I'd like to be the first to congratulate him. He hasn't yet because the checkered flag hasn't fallen, but he has withstood the pressure, and he has proved the point that he has matured to a degree.
What a great
matured to the degree that he can take pressure and he can continue and stay on good lines. He looked a little ragged earlier on, but he's done it well.
Well, the Caltex Electrics team, engines by Paul Hazegrin from the States, Toyota engines beautifully prepared. The whole team's run pretty professionally the whole series now. And the starter is out at the finish line with checkered flag, looking for Craig Baird to win not only the New Zealand Grand Prix, the Peter Jackson Series, but also to be the first New Zealander, obviously, but certainly for Craig Baird, the culmination of a dream to win the New Zealand Prix.
So Craig Baird comes down and takes the checkered flag, and well done, Craig Baird. Congratulations, not just the series and the Grand Prix, but a leg up in his career. And that's nice to see a Kiwi getting a leg up in their career, just as we've seen a couple of Americans do, like Davy Jones. And I hope that Craig Baird can continue on the international circuit and use this little fillip to enhance his career in F3 or whatever he chooses, or whatever he gets the break in. Well done, Craig Baird, the New Zealand Grand Prix winner 1991, putting his name alongside all those famous names of the past. Mike Berg coming down for second place and Barry Tomlin for third. Virtually no one in the crowd all that interested in what the minor placings were. Well, of course they will be, because the battles were from those people whose demise came before the end of the race.
Craig Baird will be wanting to get back to the pits and make sure that the first person he speaks to will be Dick Benz over in England to say, hey Dick, I won the New Zealand Grand Prix and I want that Formula 3 drive in Europe. What can we do about it? It's certainly going to be a big help to his career, as Tony said.
It's been an up and down series for him. He started back in Invercargill with an off in the rain. He's had some engine problems, some gearbox problems. He's had his share like everybody else. He stayed composed. He had a massive off in practice at Ruapuna. Ended up, flipped over and threw a fence on the other side of the track. The car was rebuilt. He came back from all of that, and he showed that he can win races, that he can withstand the pressure, and that perhaps he is ready to go overseas and to get into the big league. Well, just wait till he's got his foot off and his earplugs out and get a word with Craig Baird.
Well, Craig, words like congratulations don't really fulfill it, do they? You must feel absolutely fantastic at the moment.
Yeah, we're very happy to win the Grand Prix and the series all on the same day. You know, I just can't thank my crew enough for giving me a good car, you know. Dad and I worked hard at this for many years, and we've finally done it, so it's a great feeling.
Your name's going to go down to record books along such greats as Brucey McLaren, Chris Amon, Jack Brabham, people like that won this race. So it looks like that's choking you up a bit.
Yeah, it is. You know, as I said, we've worked very hard for it, and you know, that race certainly wasn't easy, not out front, but Mark Smith challenged me for early on. I don't know what happened to him, and then Kenny and then Paul, like, you know, there was three of them. As I said before the race, there was four of us that could have won it, and each of them had a go at me, so we're just very thankful for a good result.
And where to now, Craig?
Hopefully to England, to the British Formula 3 Championship. That's what we're aiming at right now.
But surely this must be, what, the greatest moment of your life? Would that be
Yeah,
practice?
that'll be true.
Craig, congratulations and may more success come your way.
Thanks very much.
Pretty reserved for a fella who just won the New Zealand Grand Prix, isn't he? Certainly he's done well throughout the series, and as we said, he's battled some adversity. He's come back from it, and today he withstood good 3 or 4 challenges. Mark Smith had a go at him first, Ken Smith had a go at him, Paul Radisich had a go at him. They all fell by the wayside. Just shaking hands with second place Mike Berg, third place Barry Tomlinson in the edge of the picture. Craig Baird, the winner of the 1991 New Zealand Grand Prix and the Peter Jackson International Formula Pacific Series. Hope we see him back again next year, but in a funny sort of way, it would almost mean he'd failed if we did.
His coverage of the 1991 Peter Jackson New Zealand Grand Prix was presented by One World of Sport